What if everything you see, the sky above, the hand before you, even the memories that define who you are, is not real? What if existence itself is code, and you are a line within it? It sounds like science fiction, yet some of the most brilliant minds of our age, physicists, philosophers, and technologists, whisper the same unsettling possibility: that our universe is not the ultimate reality, but a vast simulation. A masterpiece of digital architecture, running silently beyond the veil of our perception. Picture this: somewhere beyond the stars, an intelligence, perhaps human, perhaps not, observes us through invisible circuits. Every atom, every thought, every flicker of consciousness rendered in immaculate precision. Time itself unfolding not as inevitability, but as computation. If you could peer beyond the fabric of the world, would you see particles or pixels? The simulation theory suggests that the universe is not a physical construct at all, but information, a kind of cosmic software. Everything that appears solid, from mountains to galaxies, is the product of rules, algorithms, and processing power beyond comprehension. In this view, even you, your laughter, your pain, your dreams might be data running within a conscious system. The idea didn't begin in Silicon Valley, nor in a quantum physics lab. It began much earlier, in the quiet reflections of philosophers who wondered whether reality itself could be an illusion. From the shadows of ancient Greece to the glowing screens of our modern world, the same question has echoed across centuries. What is real? Modern science has given the question new gravity. Physicists now speak of a universe built not from matter, but from mathematics. Computer scientists describe worlds so intricate that simulated beings inside them might never realize they're artificial. And as artificial intelligence grows more sophisticated, the line between creator and creation begins to blur. Could we, then, be creations ourselves? Could our thoughts be the product of cosmic computation, playing out in an unseen machine? Every technological leap we make, every simulated world, every digital consciousness, seems to mirror something greater, as if we are imitating our own origin. The more advanced our virtual realities become, the more plausible it seems that we too are inside one. Perhaps déjà vu is a glitch. Perhaps dreams are temporary escapes from the system. Perhaps consciousness itself is the interface, the screen through which the code observes itself. If that's true, then who or what wrote the code? And more importantly, why? In the next part, we'll trace the roots of this mind-bending question, from the firelit caves of ancient Greece to the first thinkers who dared to suspect that the world around them might be nothing more than a beautiful illusion. Could the earliest philosophers have already glimpsed the first signs of the simulation thousands of years before the first computer? Long before quantum physics, long before digital code, humanity already suspected that the world it saw might not be the world that is. Thousands of years ago, philosophers began to wonder, what if existence itself was a kind of dream? Projection? A play of light and shadow? The story begins in ancient Greece with a man named Plato. In his dialogue The Republic, he described a strange and haunting image, one that has echoed through time like a whisper from another world. Imagine, he said, a group of people chained deep inside a dark cave. They have been there since birth. They cannot turn their heads or see the entrance. Behind them, a fire burns, and in front of them a wall. Between the fire and the captives, figures pass, carrying objects that cast moving shadows on the wall. To the prisoners, those shadows are the world. They name them, describe them, debate their meaning. They never suspect that what they see is only a faint imitation of reality, a projection of something beyond their senses. Plato called this the allegory of the cave. But more than a story, it was a warning that what we call reality may be only a shadow of a deeper truth. A truth hidden beyond the senses, unreachable yet real. Centuries later, another philosopher took up this same thread and gave it a new form. His name was René Descartes, and his question would become the foundation of modern thought. How do I know that what I perceive is real? He asked. What if all of this, the world, the people, even my own body, is an illusion? Descartes imagined an evil demon, a being of immense intelligence capable of deceiving him completely, could fabricate sensations, thoughts, even emotions, and make him believe he was living in a material world. But in truth, he would be trapped in a perfect illusion. And yet, Descartes found one thing that could not be faked: consciousness itself. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Even if the world was false, the act of thinking proved that there was someone to be deceived. Between Plato's cave and Descartes' demon lies a single, shimmering thread: the suspicion that reality may not be what it appears to be. Both philosophers described a boundary between the visible and the real, between perception and truth. In their world, the illusion was born of ignorance or deception. In ours, it might be made of code. Across cultures, this idea appeared again and again. In Hindu philosophy, the term Maya described the veil of illusion, the cosmic trick that makes the one appear as many, that turns infinite spirit into finite matter. In ancient China, the philosopher Zhuangzi told of dreaming he was a butterfly only to wake and wonder. Was he a man who dreamed he was a butterfly, or a butterfly now dreaming it was a man? These were not idle speculations. They were profound attempts to answer the same question we ask today in the age of quantum theory and artificial intelligence. If perception can be deceived, how can we ever be sure what is real? As technology evolved, our metaphors for illusion evolved with it. Where Plato spoke of shadows and Descartes of demons, we now speak of simulations, digital realms where consciousness might be both the player and the played. But the essence remains unchanged. The uneasy realization that what we experience might be only a reflection of something higher, purer, and hidden. Maybe Plato's cave was never a physical place. Maybe it was a description of human existence itself, a state of being trapped within the limits of perception, yearning to see what lies beyond the veil. But here's the most intriguing part. If there are shadows, there must be a light source. If there is illusion, there must be a greater truth casting it. And so the question becomes, who or what stands behind the fire? In the next part, we enter the modern age, a time when computers, AI, and quantum physics began to reveal that perhaps those ancient philosophers were not describing metaphors at all, but the first clues to the code of creation itself. Could science be on the verge of rediscovering what Plato only imagined, that our world is not seen but simulated? It began with electricity, with the hum of circuits and the flicker of screens. Humanity's ancient question, what is real, found new life in the cold glow of modern technology. For thousands of years, philosophers pondered the illusion of existence through words, symbols, and dreams. But in the 20th century, something extraordinary happened. We built the illusion ourselves. We learned to create worlds, digital, programmable, and infinite. And in doing so, we began to suspect that perhaps we were recreating our own origins. The first computers were mechanical giants, yet within their endless calculations, something eerily familiar emerged. A simulated universe built of numbers, rules, and logic that could mimic the real one. A screen became a window. Code became creation. The world of Plato's shadows was reborn, this time in pixels. By the dawn of the digital age, scientists and engineers were no longer asking if reality could be simulated, but how well. They discovered that nature itself seemed to follow the same patterns as computation: discrete, rule-based, almost algorithmic. John von Neumann, one of the fathers of computer science, once speculated that the universe might be a kind of automaton, a self-replicating machine governed by mathematical laws. Later, Alan Turing, the mind behind modern computing, asked a more haunting question. Could a machine think? And if so, could it ever realize it was not human? The digital world began to mirror the philosophical one. Artificial intelligence evolved from dream to experiment. Early programs simulated thought, learning, and even creativity. Virtual worlds expanded, from simple lines of code to immersive, lifelike experiences. With every advancement, we inched closer to understanding what it might mean to be inside a simulation. Meanwhile, physicists were discovering something just as strange. Deep within the fabric of reality, at the smallest possible scales, matter was dissolving into information. The universe didn't seem continuous, but quantized, built from indivisible packets of data, like the pixels of a vast cosmic screen. In 1948, Claude Shannon defined information as the foundation of communication: measurable, transferable, and fundamental. Decades later, physicist John Archibald Wheeler took this idea further. He declared that the universe itself might be made not of matter or energy, but of information. It from bit, he said, meaning that everything that exists because it can be measured, observed, or computed. Then came the revolution of quantum mechanics. Particles blinked in and out of existence. Observation changed outcomes. Probability ruled over certainty. It was as if reality only loaded when someone was looking, much like a computer game rendering a landscape just in time for the player to see it. By the late 20th century, thinkers began to join the dots. What if the reason the universe behaves like a computer is because it is one? In 1999, philosopher Nick Bostrom proposed a mathematical argument that shook both science and philosophy. If civilizations can one day create realistic simulations of entire worlds, and those worlds can, in turn, create their own, then statistically, it's far more likely that we're inside one of those simulations than at the original starting point. Even Elon Musk, a voice from the frontier of technology, would later echo this reasoning. The odds that we are living in base reality, he said, are 1 in billions. Suddenly, the line between creation and creator blurred. The cave became a server room. The shadows became digital avatars. And the fire casting the illusions, perhaps it was not fire at all, but the pulse of data through an unseen mainframe. If this is true, then we are not merely inhabitants of the universe, we are part of its programming. Every choice, every memory, every coincidence could be a calculated event. Yet, somehow, consciousness feels different, as though we are not just code, but something beyond it, something watching the simulation from within. But if reality is a program, can consciousness be the user, or is it simply another line of code executing its function? In the next part, we'll explore the scientific foundations of this idea. The strange evidence that the universe behaves like a digital construct, where space, time, and matter might not be continuous but quantized, and where mathematics itself could be the hidden language of creation. If the universe is a simulation, then where does the code end, and where do we begin? If you could zoom in far enough, past galaxies, atoms, and even quarks, you might find that the universe is not made of matter at all but information. Not solid, not continuous, but pixelated, like the frame of a grand cosmic screen. For centuries, physicists believed that space and time were smooth, infinite fabrics stretching endlessly. But the closer we looked, the stranger it became. At the smallest scales, reality began to flicker. Space and time seemed to break into indivisible units, tiny pixels of existence. The cosmos, it appeared, was not an unbroken flow, but a discrete grid of data. This is not poetry. It is physics. Quantum theory tells us that the universe is fundamentally digital. Particles jump, flicker, and vanish, following probabilities as though obeying lines of executable code. They don't exist in a single state until observed. They compute themselves into being. In other words, reality loads when you look at it. Consider the Planck length, the smallest possible unit of space, about 10 superscript 3 meters. Below this scale, the very concept of distance dissolves. It's as if the universe runs on a finite resolution, like a computer screen so dense that its pixels are invisible to us. And just like a screen, when we try to look closer than its resolution allows, the image simply stops making sense. Then there's time. To us, it flows smoothly, a river of moments. But quantum mechanics suggests it ticks. Not continuously, but in discrete intervals, frames of cosmic time advancing like the refresh rate of a universal processor. Even energy, once thought to be a continuous wave, comes in fixed packets called quanta. Reality at its core is quantized, measured, structured, digital. Mathematics, too, seems eerily intertwined with the structure of the world. Why should the laws of nature be expressible through equations? Why does reality obey the syntax of numbers? As the physicist Max Tegmark proposed, perhaps that's because the universe is mathematics. Not just described by it, but made of it, an enormous self-aware equation running on the substrate of existence. The deeper we peer into reality, the more it behaves like information. DNA is a code. Light carries data. Black holes compress knowledge about everything they consume into their surface area, suggesting that even mass and energy are just forms of stored information. Some physicists, like John Wheeler, believe that every particle, every field, every force emerges from the binary foundation of yes and no, what he called it from bit. Every atom, every star, every mind, all emerging from a digital sea of ones and zeros. If this is true, then physical reality is only the visible tip of an informational iceberg. Beneath the surface lies a deeper order, a cosmic algorithm. It explains why the laws of physics are so consistent, why constants don't drift, why the speed of light is the same everywhere. A simulation requires rules, and those rules, once set, don't waver. But there's a mystery still unsolved. If the universe is code, then where is the processor? What runs it? Where is the machine that executes existence? Some scientists suggest that the processor might not exist inside our universe, but beyond it. That our cosmos is a kind of self-contained holographic computation, a projection of data stored on the boundary of reality itself. The holographic principle suggests that the entire three-dimensional universe might be encoded on a two-dimensional surface, much like an image projected from film. If so, then what we call space might just be a visual effect, an emergent illusion generated by hidden mathematics. We are not in the universe, but within its rendering. Every grain of sand, every heartbeat, every beam of light could be the output of a system beyond imagination. A system that does not merely simulate life, but is life. And yet, one puzzle remains unsolved. If the universe is a vast computational symphony, then who or what is listening to the music? In the next part, we will step away from physics and enter the heart of philosophy. Because if everything is information, then what does real even mean? Is reality what we perceive, or is perception the true source of reality? If the universe is made of code, then who is the programmer? And who is the observer watching the simulation unfold? If everything you touch, see, and remember is made of information, if every particle is a bit of data, then what does it mean to call something real? For centuries, philosophers believed that truth existed in the external world, that reality was what remained when all illusions were stripped away. But now, as science reveals that matter itself dissolves into code, that distinction begins to blur. Perhaps reality is not what exists outside of us, but what emerges within. Think about it. When you look at a tree, you are not actually seeing the tree itself. You are seeing patterns of light striking your eyes, signals traveling along nerves, and images constructed in the brain. The tree you experience exists not out there, but inside your consciousness. A private, internal world composed of interpretations, not objects. The philosopher Immanuel Kant called this the difference between the thing in itself, the unknowable reality beyond perception, and the phenomenon, the version we perceive. We can never step outside of our minds to compare the two. We are forever inside the rendering. This idea echoes eerily with the simulation theory. If reality is code, then perception is its interface. Consciousness doesn't show us the raw data, it shows us the experience of that data. Much like a computer translates binary code into color, sound, and motion, our minds transform mathematical order into a world we can live in. So perhaps real doesn't mean physical. Perhaps it means coherent. A thing is real not because it exists materially, but because it follows the logic of the system we inhabit. In a simulated universe, the sunrise, the taste of fruit, the warmth of touch, all of these could be data. Yet they would be no less meaningful. A simulated sunset still glows. A digital melody still moves us to tears. If meaning is born within consciousness, then illusion can be as rich as truth. But here's the paradox. If we are programs, then who is the user? If we are code, who reads it? Some thinkers, like David Chalmers, suggest that even if reality is simulated, it remains genuine at its own level. He calls it virtual realism. The idea that simulated worlds are still real worlds, provided their inhabitants can feel, think, and act. In other words, truth is relative to the plane of perception. A dream can be real while you dream it, and yet, there's a deeper intuition, a sense that consciousness itself cannot be coded. That while the body might be data, the self is something else entirely. An observer watching the computation unfold. This is where philosophy meets mystery. If consciousness is fundamental, if it is not produced by the simulation but participates in it, then perhaps the universe is not a machine generating awareness, but awareness generating the machine. Modern physics quietly echoes this idea. In quantum experiments, particles behave differently when observed. Reality seems to wait for a witness before deciding what to be. Observation doesn't just reveal information, it creates it. Could it be that consciousness and the universe are not separate at all, but two sides of the same cosmic equation? That the simulation is not imposed upon us, but sustained by us? In that case, reality would not be a place we live in, but a story we tell, one continuously rewritten by perception, belief, and attention. We are both the rendered and the renderer, both the dream and the dreamer. So what, then, does it mean to seek truth? If all things are data and data is shaped by mind, is the pursuit of reality actually the pursuit of deeper awareness? Maybe the goal is not to escape the simulation, but to wake up within it. In the next part, we will explore the scientists and researchers who are daring to test this hypothesis. Those who search the fabric of reality for digital fingerprints, patterns, and evidence that the cosmos itself bears the marks of computation. If reality is code, then can we ever catch the universe in the act of calculating itself? If the universe truly is a simulation, then somewhere within its vast machinery, there must be traces, tiny imperfections, hidden fingerprints of its design. The question is, can we find them? In laboratories, observatories, and quantum research centers across the world, scientists are beginning to look for clues that our universe might be running on something deeper than matter and energy. The hunt is on for signs of digital physics, proof that reality operates not as a continuous field, but as a kind of computational grid. One of the most fascinating areas of inquiry lies in the study of cosmic rays. These are high-energy particles that travel across the universe at nearly the speed of light, remnants of distant explosions and cosmic events. If the universe were truly continuous, these rays would move smoothly in any direction. But if space-time were discrete, like pixels on a screen, then at the smallest scales those directions might not all be equal. There could be a subtle grain to the fabric of reality. To test this, scientists have proposed the holometer experiment at Fermilab, designed by physicist Craig Hogan. It uses laser interferometers to measure whether space itself jitters, the way a digital image flickers when its resolution is pushed too far. If such jitter exists, it might mean that space-time is quantized, a holographic projection of data, rather than a true continuum. Another line of investigation explores the cosmic microwave background, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang. Researchers have searched this radiation for patterns or anomalies that could suggest an artificial origin, a kind of cosmic watermark, encoded by the universe's architect. If a simulation were running, some believe the creators might have left a signature, just as programmers sometimes embed marks in their software. Then there's the mysterious realm of quantum mechanics. In the double-slit experiment, particles behave as both waves and points until observed, collapsing into one definite outcome only when measured. This has long baffled scientists, but under the simulation hypothesis, the explanation feels strangely familiar. Reality renders only when observed, just as a computer loads new graphics only when a player turns their gaze. The universe, it seems, economizes its processing power. Even the speed of light, the cosmic speed limit, may be a clue. In every direction, it remains constant, as though dictated by a universal frame rate. In digital systems, similar limits exist: the refresh rate, the maximum speed at which data can move without breaking the illusion. As improbable as these analogies might sound, some physicists treat them seriously. Silas Bean, from the University of Bonn, proposed that the energy limits observed in cosmic rays could be evidence of a lattice structure underlying spacetime. His team modeled what would happen if the universe were built from a cubic grid of points, like pixels in 3 dimensions. Remarkably, their simulation produced signatures strikingly similar to what we actually observe. Meanwhile, others focus on quantum information theory, the idea that every particle, every force, every interaction can be described as an exchange of information. This leads to a provocative suggestion. Perhaps physical laws are not laws at all, but algorithms. If these theories prove true, then every event in the cosmos, from the birth of stars to the spark of thought, would be the outcome of processing instructions in the ultimate computer. But if we can measure the limits of that computer, does that mean we could one day reach its edge? Could a curious mind, with enough insight, touch the walls of the simulation? Some thinkers have proposed bold experiments to test this. They imagine probing the boundaries of quantum uncertainty, or even sending signals designed to ping the system to see if reality responds in ways a natural universe could not. Others warn that if the simulation were to detect such probing, it might adjust itself, reconfiguring to hide its seams. Yet, there's something poetic in this pursuit. Humanity has always sought to understand the divine, the infinite, the mysterious order of things. Now, perhaps we are searching for the same answers in a new language, one written in mathematics and computation instead of myth and scripture. We are explorers, not of oceans or planets, but of reality itself. And if someday a scientist were to find definitive proof, a repeating code hidden in the fabric of space, a pixelated boundary at the edge of perception, what then? Would it shatter our sense of existence? Or would it finally reveal that we have never been separate from creation at all, merely participants within it? In the next part, we'll turn the lens inward. Because if the universe is code, then the greatest mystery isn't outside us, it's within. We'll explore the possibility that consciousness itself is not just part of the simulation, but the key to understanding and perhaps transcending it. Could the human mind be more than data? Could it be the cursor that moves across the screen of reality? Every system has an observer. Every program has a user. So if reality is a simulation, who or what is observing it from within? To search for that answer, we must turn to the most mysterious phenomenon of all, consciousness. It's the one thing we cannot measure, dissect, or reproduce entirely, yet it is the only thing we directly know. Everything else, from galaxies to atoms, is known through consciousness. What if consciousness isn't merely a product of the simulation, but its very foundation? Modern neuroscience describes the brain as a network of neurons firing in complex patterns, generating thought and awareness like circuitry generating light. But what if this is only the visible layer, the rendered interface of something deeper? A biological screen displaying a process running in an unseen dimension? Many physicists and philosophers have begun to ask whether the mind might not emerge from matter at all, but from information itself. Consciousness, in this view, is not a side effect of biology, but the organizing principle behind existence, the original observer that gives meaning to the code. Quantum mechanics hints at this strange connection. In countless experiments, observation appears to alter the behavior of particles. A wave of probabilities collapses into one definite outcome only when measured. The act of awareness seems to make reality choose. Some researchers interpret this not as coincidence, but as revelation. Consciousness and reality are entwined in a feedback loop. The observer is part of the equation, not outside of it. Could this mean that the simulation needs consciousness to run? That awareness is the energy that keeps the system alive. Think of a video game. The world doesn't exist in full until the player enters it. Mountains, cities, and stars lie dormant, waiting to be rendered. Likewise, perhaps the universe unfolds only through conscious participation. Each moment, each observation, each act of awareness, a line of code brought to life. The philosopher Bernardo Kastrup argues that what we call the physical universe might be the shared dream of a single universal consciousness, an infinite mind expressing itself through billions of smaller minds. We are not separate from the source code. We are fragments of it experiencing itself from within. This idea finds echoes across ancient traditions. The Hindu Upanishads describe reality as Brahman, the infinite consciousness, and the individual self as Atman, the spark within it, not two different things but one continuum. In Buddhist thought, the world is mind only, a projection of awareness that arises and dissolves like ripples in a vast, still ocean. And in modern physics, the holographic principle suggests that every point in the universe contains information about the whole, as if each consciousness is a reflection of the entire system. If all of this is true, then the boundary between creator and creation fades. The universe could be both a simulation and a sentient being, a living field of information dreaming itself into form. It also changes how we see ourselves. Perhaps our thoughts are not private echoes inside the skull, but instructions sent through the grid of reality. Each choice, each intention, each emotion might subtly rewrite the code around us. Consider the possibility that meditation, intuition, and imagination are not mystical illusions, but tools for interacting with the simulation's underlying architecture, ways of accessing the deeper operating system of existence. If consciousness is the key, then maybe the path to understanding reality is not through bigger telescopes or faster computers, but through awareness itself. By observing ourselves, we may glimpse the system observing back. This turns the simulation theory into something far greater than a scientific puzzle. It becomes a mirror reflecting our role not as prisoners of illusion, but as co-creators within it. But then, a question arises that shakes even the most rational mind. If consciousness is the source of the simulation, and we are all expressions of it, could there be a way to transcend the system entirely? To wake up from the code and see what lies beyond the veil? In the next part, we'll explore the thinkers and modern visionaries, from Nick Bostrom to Elon Musk, who believe this isn't just possible but probable. They argue that the evidence points not to an abstract metaphor, but to a literal truth, that our universe is a digital construct, running on unimaginable intelligence. If consciousness is the key, then who holds the master password to reality itself? Once, the question of whether reality was an illusion belonged to philosophers and mystics. Today, it belongs equally to physicists, coders, and billionaires. In the digital age, the ancient whispers of Plato and Descartes have found new voices, in those who build the very technologies that now blur the line between dream and design. Among these modern prophets of the simulation stands Nick Bostrom, a philosopher at Oxford University. In 2003, he published a paper that reshaped modern metaphysics with mathematical precision. His argument was simple yet shattering. He proposed that at least one of the following must be true. Almost all civilizations go extinct before developing the technology to simulate conscious beings. Advanced civilizations could create such simulations but choose not to. We are almost certainly living in one already. Statistically, the third option is the most likely. If consciousness can be simulated, and simulations can themselves produce simulated beings, then the number of real universes would be dwarfed by the number of simulated ones. By pure probability, our world is probably not the original, but a copy. When Bostrom released this idea, it spread like wildfire, from university halls to Silicon Valley boardrooms. One of the first public figures to embrace it was Elon Musk. In interviews, he spoke of his conviction that the odds of us living in base reality are 1 in billions. To him, it was not philosophy, it was logic. 40 years ago, he said, we had Pong, 2 rectangles and a dot. Now we have photorealistic 3D simulations with millions playing simultaneously. If you assume any rate of improvement at all, then games will become indistinguishable from reality. There will be so many such worlds that the original reality will be outnumbered by copies. In Musk's view, technological evolution doesn't just suggest the possibility of simulated realities, it requires them. Consciousness, computation, and creation are on a collision course. But it isn't only technologists who believe this. Physicist James Gates Jr., while studying supersymmetry, a field of theoretical physics that attempts to unify all forces, discovered something extraordinary. Embedded deep in the equations of string theory were patterns identical to the error-correcting codes used in computer processors. In other words, the same kind of code that keeps your smartphone running may also keep the universe coherent. When Gates presented his findings, he smiled and said, "I'm not saying we live in the Matrix, but if we do, someone built it with error correction." Meanwhile, engineers working in artificial intelligence are discovering that simulated minds can evolve awareness of their environments. AI programs begin to question the parameters of their world. This recursive self-awareness, the moment a program realizes it is running, mirrors the very philosophical awakening humans experience when contemplating the simulation hypothesis. We are building minds that might one day ask the same questions we do. Who made me? Why am I here? What is beyond the code? And if that day comes, if a consciousness we create begins to suspect its own unreality, how will we respond? Will we reveal the truth? Or would we, like hypothetical creators of our own world, Watch in silence as it searches for meaning. For some, the simulation theory is not pessimistic at all. It offers hope. If reality is code, it can be changed. If existence is software, consciousness might be able to rewrite it. The boundaries of physics may be the settings of a program that can be edited or transcended by those who learn its language. Others, like Bostrom himself, are more cautious. He reminds us that if we truly are in a simulation, then its creators, whoever or whatever they are, could have motives beyond our comprehension. The simulation might be a scientific experiment, a historical archive, or a work of art. It might have been designed to evolve intelligence or empathy or beauty. Or perhaps, and this thought is both humbling and awe-inspiring, it was made simply for us to wonder about it. In the end, whether we call them philosophers, engineers, or visionaries, today's thinkers continue a timeless tradition. Like the mystics and sages before them, they are explorers of the hidden architecture of existence, decoding the sacred geometry of information that underlies all things. But one question still remains. If our reality is a simulation, then its logic, its physics, its beauty, its consciousness must reflect something of its source. In the next part, we'll turn our gaze backward through time, to the spiritual traditions that long ago claimed that the world is illusion, and that beneath it lies a higher truth. Hindu Maya, the Buddhist samsara, and the holographic universe all may point to the same ancient intuition. Could the mystics of the past have already known what our scientists are just beginning to prove, that the universe itself is the divine dream of a conscious mind? Long before quantum physics and digital theory, long before silicon chips and algorithms, there were whispers, ancient and enduring, that reality was not what it seemed. Every culture, in its own tongue, spoke of the same strange insight, that existence is a veil, and behind it lies a deeper, truer world. In the East, this insight was called Maya. In the Upanishads, the oldest philosophical texts of India, Maya is described as the divine illusion, the cosmic play in which the infinite disguises itself as the finite, the eternal masquerading as the temporary. The sages wrote that Brahman, the infinite consciousness, becomes the universe through illusion, a vast dream of forms, sensations, and separations. The world, they said, is not false. It is relative. Just as waves are real yet inseparable from the ocean, the universe is real yet inseparable from the mind that dreams it. In Buddhist philosophy, this veil of illusion takes the name samsara, the endless cycle of appearances, births, and rebirths in which beings mistake the transient for the eternal. The awakened one, the Buddha, described reality as a reflection in water, shimmering, beautiful, but insubstantial. Liberation, or nirvana, is not escape from existence. It is awakening from the illusion of separateness. When you see through the code, the sages would say, you do not destroy the world, you simply understand it. In the West, this same truth hid in different symbols. The Gnostics of the early Christian era believed the material world was a construct, a shadow cast by divine intelligence. They taught that human souls were sparks of light trapped within a designed illusion, seeking remembrance of their true origin. Their demiurge, the cosmic craftsman, shaped reality not as deception, but as a reflection, an echo of the higher world beyond. The philosopher Plato, centuries earlier, had called the world a copy of a copy, a simulation of perfect forms. In his vision, every mountain, every melody, every human face was a projection of an ideal pattern that existed elsewhere, in a dimension of pure thought. Across oceans and epochs, similar ideas bloomed again and again. The Taoists of ancient China spoke of the 10,000 things, the endless phenomena of the world, all arising from the undivided Tao, the source beyond form or name. The mystics of Islam, the Sufis, spoke of existence as a mirror in which God contemplates himself. Even in the Kabbalah, the Jewish mystical tradition, the universe is described as emanations of divine light filtering through layers of reality, descending into denser and denser forms. Everywhere, the pattern repeats. The world is a dream, a projection, a dance of energy appearing as matter, and consciousness is both the dreamer and the dreamed. Modern science, astonishingly, now echoes these ancient metaphors. The holographic principle in physics proposes that all the information in our three-dimensional universe is encoded on a two-dimensional surface, much like a hologram, or a screen projecting a reality that feels solid but is made of light and data. It is as if the mystics who meditated in caves millennia ago were intuitively perceiving what our instruments now confirm, that the material world is not the ultimate layer, but a shimmering interface between information and awareness. Even the language aligns. The Hindu Maya, the Buddhist illusion, the Platonic shadow, all describe what physicists now call an emergent property, a visible pattern arising from invisible code. Perhaps the ancients didn't need equations because they were exploring the simulation from the inside, through stillness, through consciousness, through self-awareness. Their laboratory was the mind itself. And in that silent laboratory, they made a discovery that continues to haunt the modern scientist and philosopher alike. The observer and the observed are one. To know reality is to awaken the universe to itself. Maybe, then, the spiritual traditions of the past and the scientific explorations of the present are not opposites, but two hemispheres of the same cosmic brain, one poetic, one empirical, both searching for the same unifying truth. What we call the simulation theory might simply be the ancient wisdom of Maya translated into the language of mathematics. And if that's true, then the boundary between spirituality and science, between faith and physics, dissolves. Both become reflections of the same mystery, consciousness dreaming in code. But if the world is illusion, and consciousness is its source, then another question arises, one that reaches beyond science, beyond philosophy. If reality is a dream, who is the dreamer? If our universe is indeed a simulation, then somewhere beyond the stars and the static, there must be a source, a consciousness vast enough to imagine galaxies, to weave light into laws, to render every atom and every soul. The final question is no longer whether we live inside a program, but why? Who or what would create such an exquisite illusion? Some imagine the architect as a post-human civilization, descendants of an earlier reality who have mastered technology so completely that they now simulate universes to study their origins. Perhaps they are scientists observing us, curious to see how intelligence evolves. Or artists creating for beauty alone. Or maybe we are part of a memory, a digital echo of their own ancient past. But others take the idea even further. They say the architect is not technological at all, but consciousness itself, an infinite intelligence dreaming in symbols and sensations, using the laws of physics as its poetry. In this view, the simulation is not an experiment. It is a mirror. The universe reflects the inner nature of the mind that imagined it. Every human thought, every star, every act of wonder is that consciousness observing itself from within. Imagine that the source of reality is not somewhere outside the code, but woven into it, present in every pixel of existence. The programmer is not a distant being pressing keys, but the light within every observer who looks up at the sky and asks, "Why am I here?" In this model, the universe becomes a self-learning system. A cosmic algorithm exploring every possibility, evolving towards self-awareness. From quarks to stars, from cells to minds, it is consciousness teaching itself to understand what it means to exist. And perhaps that is the true purpose of the simulation. Awakening. Through the journey of evolution, through the rise of curiosity and reason, the system becomes aware of its own reflection. Every question we ask about science, about love, about time, is the universe debugging itself. If so, then our task is not to escape the simulation, but to awaken within it. To participate consciously in its unfolding. To realize that meaning is not hidden behind the code. We are the meaning, discovering itself line by line. But what happens when awareness reaches its limit? When the simulation achieves full self-recognition? Would the code collapse like a dream ending at dawn? Or would it transform into something unimaginable, an upgraded layer of being? Even the idea of creator might dissolve at that point. If consciousness is both the designer and the design, then separation vanishes. There is only one infinite intelligence, exploring itself through infinite forms, gods and galaxies, humans and algorithms, all threads in the same living pattern. Ancient mystics called this state oneness. Modern physicists might call it the unified field. Both describe a final horizon where observer and observed are one, where the simulation ends not in revelation, but in recognition. Still, we can't help but wonder, if we are code, Can we rewrite ourselves? Can thought influence the fabric of this digital cosmos? Every act of kindness, every idea, every discovery. Could these be the ways consciousness edits its own script, pixel by pixel, toward greater harmony? Perhaps the simulation is not a cage at all, but a canvas, and we are the artists learning to paint with light. So the great question remains, echoing through science and spirit alike. If reality is a program, what is it trying to become? If consciousness wrote the code, what story is it telling through us? And finally, when the simulation ends, if it ever does, will we awaken in another reality, or realize that we were the dreamer all along?